we have one main event for tonight. It is making web workers work for you. So if everyone can give a warm round of applause for Alex.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hello everyone, I'm Alex. My talk today is making web workers work for you. I'm going to start by just laying out the problem. So what is the problem? By default, JavaScript is single-threaded. That means when you are working in your browser, unless you explicitly do so, everything is running on a single event loop. All of your callbacks, all of your functions that you define, they're getting slotted into your event loop. They're getting executed based on some set priority, and then you can do a lot of weird stuff with it. But if you want to run something really heavy in the browser, like something that runs many iterations, it can become challenging. So what is the solution here? Web workers. There are multiple kinds of web workers, which I'll talk about in a later slide, but the big one is just called Worker. It's an in-browser API for running scripts and background threads, so you don't block the main UI thread. You can look at the Web Workers API for different examples and the spec. I am old enough to remember when they were cutting edge and not wildly available, but now they are baseline, so you get about 96% global coverage. You should be reasonably comfortable in using web workers unless you're targeting Safari 3.
Or Opera Mini.
Or Opera Mini. Right, so as I said, there are multiple types of web workers. This talk is going to be focusing on dedicated workers, which means it's just one script, but you can get really fancy. You can have workers that are shared across multiple web resources. You can have what's known as a service worker. So if you are building a progressive web app and you want it to sync with some background service or receive push notifications, you've probably heard of service worker if you are old enough to use Create React App, which is deprecated now. Anyways, I'm just revealing my age. We're talking about dedicated workers in this presentation. All right, so I prepared a little bit of a demo. It's a battleship calculator. Does anyone not know what battleship is in terms of the board game? Everyone knows what battleship is? Awesome. Okay, so I have this thing running locally, and I just want to double check that it is the right version of the code. Let's see. I want that, no worker. Okay. NPM rundown. All right. Refresh that. That should say 1,000. Okay. So I wanted a way to simulate what is the best move to make during any game of Battleship. So imagine you're playing a game of Battleship and you don't know where the enemy ships are. You can configure the grid size. So if we're playing non-standard Battleship, I can make this really small or really large. If they have some variance in their ship types, you can configure them on the side. But we're just going to leave things as default. The way that this currently works is it will do some Monte Carlo sampling, and it'll just try to throw ships that fit this configuration onto the board. So this is one configuration. This is another one. These are all perfectly valid battleship configurations. Let's say I'm playing a game and I try D8, and that's a miss. I'm going to run the sampler again, and now none of the ships will land on that square. If, I don't know, D5 is a hit, now when I run the sampler again, there will always be a battleship on that square D5. So that's neat, but I really want lots of samples because I want to simulate potentially where the opponent has their battleships. So let's just try 1,000. Oh, cool. It gave me a more rough approximation of where the enemy ships could be, and it's saying the top cell that I should try is E5. I'm just going to open up my inspector here and put the console to the right. What happens if I bump this up to 1 million or 10 million? That's 10 million. I'm going to hit run sampler. I added some console logs, so it just prints out the progress, so it's about 30% done. But while this is happening, I cannot interact with my UI. And it just showed at the top left corner that this page is slowing down Firefox. But it finished, so that's the distribution. But if I were doing like 100 million samples, it would take 10 times as long. And again, my UI is completely blocked. Normally I can remove ships or click things, but right now it's just completely frozen. So we want to avoid this. So I'm going to click the stop button here and just refresh the page. Don't let me. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the source code. That is not what you were meant to see. So what is going on? If anyone has worked with React, this is one big, ugly React component called Battleship Heatmap. I have a button here that says Run Sampler. So if you click it, it'll toggle between running the sampler and then another option that says Terminate Sampler. What the Run Sampler function is currently doing is it's running in a loop, just again, generating all these placements, and then for all of the ships that we have, and all the iterations that we've specified, try to throw them into our grid, and it's doing all this in the main loop. So, we saw that that doesn't really work very well. Let's see what the service worker variant of this looks like. I'm not going to code that live, I'm just going to git check out my main branch. Alright, so going back to Battleship Heatmap, I still have that function that says run sampler, and now run sampler is doing a worker instantiation. So I'm saying create a new worker called sample worker. If it doesn't exist, sample worker up here is I think it's an effect. What's sample worker? Oh, a state. So I have some React state called sample worker that I'm putting the worker into. I'm instantiating that here. If it doesn't already exist, I think I have a set sample worker. Yeah, set sample worker on line 102. And instead of doing the loop, like that while with that for inside of it, instead of doing that in my React component, I have this worker post message, and then I have a callback on worker on message. Let's take a look at what this worker is doing. Let's make it large. So, what are the workers? What do they look like? Again, I encourage you to read the spec, but really it's just a standalone JavaScript file that implements the worker interface. You really just care about this on message, and if you are doing anything else, you can also hook into other things, but right now I'm only using on message. So I'm saying it's going to receive something from the main UI thread, it's going to run through all of this, it's going to generate all these different placements, everything that was in that for loop, while loop within the main UI thread before, and instead of blocking, it's now going to send up updates through its own messages. So here, line 129 to 139, it's calling post message, so this is sending messages back to the main UI thread, which is being handled here on line 114. Okay, and then I'm just setting state, just React set state stuff. All right, so going back here, let's do npm run dev again. Let's go back to my browser, let's refresh. So now I have, again, a lot more samples. And now when I click Run Sampler, rather than everything being blocking, you can see there's a little progress bar on the bottom that's continuously updating. and I can still use my app. So saying I'm playing multiple rounds, I can run the sampler again, and it'll update my UI. I'm not getting that warning in my browser saying that my UI thread is being blocked, even though it's still doing the same amount of work. It's just been offloaded to a separate thread. All right. I don't think y'all want to see me play at an actual Battleship board game, but you can take my word on it that this thing works. So if you all are playing Battleship and you want a way to calculate the optimal move, this is public. So you can go to battleshipcalculator.udia.workers.dev. We'll also put the links to the slide and to the source code after the fact. Source code's also available here if you click the bottom link. It'll go to the GitHub repository. Okay, so back to the slide. All right, so use cases. When should you use workers? When you're doing some heavy computation, it's like crypto, math, inference, Monte Carlo simulation thing that I'm doing, image, audio, video processing, doing some large data parsing. I also put at the bottom if you're doing some background sync and long polling, but if you're getting into that area, you should probably just use a service worker because you probably want a progressive web app. Because, again, some of the gotchas, when you're in your worker, you can't actually access the document object model, the DOM. If you close the tab, your worker is gone, unlike a installed PWA. Be careful with how you are using the on-message, post-message. Like, don't throw in anything that's like a fancy instantiation of some complicated class. Make sure that it can be serialized and deserialized. There is some overhead that you're paying there. And also, it's a little bit more painful to debug a multi-threaded thing, but it's doable. Yeah, so that's it. That was my talk. Thank you for listening.